The best brands define their PR wow in a clear, concise, and compelling way to attract major media coverage, fans, and sales. Find out their marketing and public relations secrets today on 8-Second Branding with host Liz H. Kelly. Liz is the founder of Goody PR and the author of 8-Second PR. In each episode, she brings you the stories behind some of the best brands, CEOs, and authors. Plus, she explains how media appearances alone are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. Now, here's your host, Liz Kelly.
Hello, this is Liz Kelly with another exciting episode of 8-Second Branding, the podcast. And today we have a special guest who's going to talk about how CEOs can increase their visibility through SEO, search engine optimization. So our special guest today is Gresham Harkless, and he is the CEO founder of CB Nation. So Gresham, welcome to the show and tell us all about CB Nation and everything else you do, because you do so many things.
Liz, I'm super excited to be here. I truly appreciate you for giving me this opportunity. And just as you kind of, alluded to and got us close to, is I'm very much so the busybody. I have a couple different things that I manage, but I usually kind of give you 2 different aspects of what it is, 2 lanes that I like to say that I stay in. So I have a digital marketing company under the umbrella of Blue 16 Media. We primarily focus on web design, support, and SEO services. And then on the other side, I have a slew of resources for business owners, kind of in blogs, podcasts, video content. At the end of the day, I'm trying to provide value for the people that I want to work with from an SEO perspective and a web design and support perspective, but it's also given an opportunity so that those organizations, those CEOs, those business owners can be found and show the people all the great things that they can do on a different platform as well.
Yeah, and you do so many great things to help CEOs shine. I think we met through CEO Blog Nation, and you included some of our clients in some of your articles. And then you have a I Am CEO podcast that you recently interviewed me on, but you've interviewed a lot of my clients on too, to really highlight CEOs. So you're all about visibility for CEOs, and I really appreciate that. And I hope all the listeners will get a lot out of this episode, because you have so many great insights. So what do you think is the biggest challenge for CEOs to get visible? We'll just start there, and how you help them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I always tell this, I guess, I don't even know if it's a funny joke or somewhat funny joke, where it's this age-old question: if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around, does it make a sound? I always talk about that related to, SEO and the services that we provide. A lot of times you spend, so many hours, so many years, and so on and so forth, being really great at what it is that you do. But if no one knows about what it is that you do, are you really making the impact that you could? So essentially what I try to do for CEOs and their organizations is help them to increase their visibility. A lot of that revolves around just understanding, first of all, who their target market is, what resources they have available to you, and even what success means to them. And everybody has, different answers to those questions. But I think once you start to drill down and have those conversations, understand exactly like where you want to be, you get to use tools like SEO to really kind of bridge that gap. So for example, if a client is potentially looking to try to help out their plumbing business, and they have a flourishing plumbing business, but they want to get more visibility online, or potentially they're testing out different markets, they might look at SEO, even though it's more of a long-term marketing strategy, as a way to try to test out and see if there's some opportunities to move into a different market or buy another franchise or something along those lines. So I think it's a really, strategic way to be where people are searching for, where your potential clients are searching for, and really on a very, very deep level, look from a psychological standpoint of the customer journey, what things might lead them to calling the plumbing company, for example? Is it going to be, hey, I just put a toy in my toilet, like what do I do now? So it's really thinking from a psychological standpoint of these questions and how people can basically how those sites can be there when people are searching.
Excellent. I love that example with the plumbing. And I think one thing that we should probably just explain from the beginning, and you can help me with this because you are more of an SEO person than me, but just from a 30,000 foot view, SEO is about organic search versus paid search. So organic search, like you said, the guy is like saying, what should I put in that is going to encourage people to call me as their plumber versus somebody else? You can put things in the words like best plumber in Washington, D.C. So you put geography in there because you have to think psychologically, what is that person going to search for? And then that's organic search versus a paid ad where you put in maybe the same keywords, but you're paying for Google or you're paying for Amazon to put your words up at the top. Is that a good way to explain it, or do you want to add?
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. And I think just going a step deeper, it's also kind of understanding the psychology of, what is somebody doing at that time. And generally speaking, not all searches that you have will have ads. So that's one thing. But you're usually going to start paying more and more and more for advertising because every time somebody clicks or every time somebody calls or clicks to call, even at that, you're going to pay that amount. The idea of SEO and the analogy that I always give and kind of the metaphor is building a house. It's a longer process than paying out, $100 per for click or something that you might pay related to advertising. But over time, the idea is that if you build your foundation really, really well, you're really thinking strategically about those keywords, those searches, things potentially people could be searching for that aren't directly your service, but maybe somewhat related. It's going to provide you that opportunity to usually stay there longer because you built your foundation in a really great way. So I think you nailed it, perfectly, and really understanding the difference between the two. Also, there's studies that have said that people trust those organic results a lot more. Over the years, Google has made it they've made it more of a point to show that these are ads. So a lot of times you'll see those that section where people pay has certain type of marker that distinguishes it as an ad versus those organic searches. But so there's a lot of pros and cons of doing both. I think the biggest thing for CEOs and entrepreneurs is to understand what you're doing from a marketing standpoint and how each of those things can be positive or negative depending on where you're ultimately trying to go and the goals that you have.
Exactly. Let's maybe take another example. And let's say you are a CPA and you want to attract people who are going to hire you to do their taxes. So what kind of advice would you give that CEO? Where would you start with them with their website so that they get organic searches? Because there are things like, say, TurboTax that a lot of people use, but this is a specialized CPA firm and they're looking for high-end people who maybe make over 100,000 or 200,000 a year. So where would you start with that person?
I love that you kind of distinguish, exactly what type of CPA firm that is, because really, I generally say the opportunity is in the niches, the riches is in the niches, is a lot of people will say, and that really helps out from an SEO perspective. Most times people will say, anybody's my client, and there's a saying that says when you say anybody's your client, nobody ends up being your client because you're trying to reach too many people. So when you're able to drill down and say, okay, my clients have a net worth of $100,000 to $200,000, you start to really understand what is one of those first pillar questions that I talked about is who are you trying to target? Who's your avatar? Paint a picture of exactly who they are. What you realize is that people that have $100,000 to $200,000 net worth are probably asking different questions than somebody else that is maybe, less than 100,000. So what that allows you to do is think about the pages and the content of your website in a completely different way. They're asking different questions. They're asking about maybe 529s in their family. They're asking about, should I have an S Corp rather than an LLC? They're having different types of conversations and questions that they're asking. So what you want to do as the firm, as the CEO of the firm or the marketing director, whoever's tasked with handling that, is really get a master list, I say, of keywords that you're looking for. So when we work with clients, that's usually the biggest thing that we try to do is like, let's get away from the website. Let's just get an idea of what are the questions that are coming up consistently from your clients. What are the areas that you serve as well too? Sometimes you run into this with CPA firms where they have certain localities where they want to work, or potentially when we're talking about net worth, maybe where those higher net worth people are going to live, where they potentially have their businesses, or maybe they have a yacht. Just all these questions start to kind of come up where you start to really drill down and not understand just like, what their net worth is, but what types of things are they interested in? Do they have a yacht? Do they have a vacation home? You really start to drill down, and those end up being really great potential content in the future. But it also allows you to, when you start to look at the website, start to optimize your website for those keywords so that you are making sure you are getting the clients that you want. So of course, we talked about net worth being, a major factor. Another factor is, like I mentioned, location. So if you can optimize your website according to locations, I see this a lot with attorneys where they often will use just their firm name. And while, of course, you want to be ranked for your firm name, the real opportunity for SEO is people that don't know who you are. They know the services that they're looking for. They know potentially the type of firm that they want to work with, and you want to make sure that you're optimizing your website as optimally as possible for those specific keywords. So generally, that's what I try to do in the very beginning. Get those 3 questions answered, really get that master list of keywords, and then we start to drill down more into the pages, the posts that are on the website. See if potentially they need to be optimized more from an on-page standpoint, or potentially are there potential pages that need to be created, blog posts that need to be created. So you start to create that strategy, but you create that strategy from understanding that list of keywords and who you're targeting as a whole. So I love that you mentioned that.
Well, I love your answer about how you want to think, how is your customer different from others, and what kinds of questions are they asking? So in that case, because it's more of a high-end CPA firm, they're looking more for the entrepreneurs or the business owners that have more complicated taxes versus the person who can go to like a HR Block or TurboTax and use simple forms. So it's more complicated. And by putting those questions on the website and the answers in maybe an FAQ, that would boost the SEO and help you attract the right customer. So I love that example. I know you also do website design, and that has a lot to do with SEO. So what are some of the key things in a website when you work with people, just from the beginning, the overall menu and the keywords that you mentioned?
Yeah, and I really want to kind of run, with the CPA firm. I love that you brought that up, because I was actually going to mention as well too, when you're building that website, when you're designing the website, you might want to have those words that help you attract your ideal client. So if you are really working with high net worth individuals, you want that to be known when people do visit your website, because if somebody is not necessarily in your target market, you want to make sure that you have the pages and content, the images, some of the maybe complex tax questions that you're having on that FAQ. You want to make that apparent so that people understand that as quickly as possible. And the reason I say all of that is because one of the big things that people forget about the whole psychology of SEO is really Google is in the business of helping people find what they're looking for as quickly as possible. So if Google has a situation where your site is showing up for people that are less than $100,000. And every time someone goes to your site, they automatically leave. That shows that your website is maybe not a good search result. But what you want to make sure that you do is, from a back-end standpoint, when you're building and trying to focus on these keywords, you want to make sure that you are talking to and attracting your ideal clients. But definitely from a design standpoint too, you want to make sure that you are making it apparent that you are a high net worth CPA firm. You want to have, certain things that's designed on your website to try to attract that, what those buzzwords might be, what those questions might be within the content of your site, because that's just going to allow you to attract the people that you're looking for. And it's also going to, on a very, deeper level, help you to rank better for those ideal key terms.
That's really helpful. And do you need a site menu? And how does that work? Maybe explain what is a site menu.
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime that you go to the website, generally speaking, when you go to the site, you're going to look at the very top and you're going to see certain things like home, maybe about us, contact, all of those things that help people to navigate your site. So that's going to be something that you want to make sure that you have that kind of idea for people to take that customer journey. Now, when you really drill down with your ideal clients, and that's why I say it's so important to really understand your target clients before you start looking at the website, before you start designing it, because if you know the steps that you want your clients to take, you can start to design that with your clients in mind. One of the biggest misconceptions, especially related to SEO, is sometimes clients and people and CEOs will only have certain things on the homepage. They might only have their location on the homepage. But the thing about SEO is everybody doesn't necessarily show up on your homepage. They can show up on your 529 page because you type that in and you want to know how to set that up, for your son or your daughter. So if you show up on that page, you want to make sure that you are taking into account that customer journey from that page. So it's really just understanding, just like you were sitting down with a client. Hey, every time I sit down with a client, this specific client, they ask X, Y, and Z. So on that page, I want to have X, Y, and Z there. And then they sometimes want to also know about A, B, and C. So it's just understanding the customer journey so that you can do that from a menu standpoint, but also within the pages of the specific way that they could show up on your page.
I love that term. Think about the customer journey and what they're going through. What I've found is that the page that gets a lot of traffic on my websites is the About or the About Us page. And I think that's probably because we run a public relations firm. So people want to look and see, well, who is the team here and who's running this company? In your experience, what pages get the most traffic?
Yeah, I think it, of course, depends on, the different sites and the pages, but I think you bring up a really valid point. One of the things that we're seeing from a marketing perspective grow more and more and more is the personal brand. Just as you said, people aren't just doing business with products and services. They're doing business with people that they know. So they are doing that due diligence to see what organizations they're supporting, what people they're supporting, what they're interested in, what their stance on certain issues are. And they're doing that homework to try to understand that. So I think once you start to see something like your About Us page, or maybe there's a high service that you offer more than anything else, you'll probably see those are really, attractive as well too. You really want to understand that again, going back to that psychology of why people are searching for those things. And what makes that important is because that content, that information you have on your About Us page, maybe that's content you want to have on other aspects of your site. Maybe on the PR page where somebody just might show up, you also have a little snippet that says, hey, do you want to learn a little bit more about Liz? The CPA firm might have a little bit more about, hey, do you know we support these specific causes? All that is going to just add a stronger connection and a relationship, which I think the website is ultimately at its best going to be able to do, so that you're going to build that trust. You're going to hopefully build that relationship and that connection, so that even after you have that first conversation with that potential client, they already know who you are. They already know, like, and trust you, and that could potentially lead to more opportunities. So I think the About Us page is definitely huge. A lot of times people are searching from a more of a long form standpoint. So you're seeing blog pages, especially if they're long tail focused, which I can go in, more into about what that is. But the whole idea is that how can you be exactly where somebody's searching? How can you create a piece of content that is maybe the exact question that's being asked by your potential client, and create that's on a site? So really that opportunity to kind of do that as well, that's huge for the long tail.
Great. No, I love that. And what do you think you should put on the About page?
I think it's everything, about who you are. I mean, generally speaking, obviously, and I shouldn't say obviously, but you want to put yourself through your client's eyes and really think about what makes you stay on a website, what makes a website sticky, what makes you spend more time. You're talking about videos, you're talking about images. You want to know a little bit more about what somebody stands for. If we're talking about PR, and really just about any service-based business, you want to know their experience, their accolades. You want to know who's on the team. You want to know potentially, and it might be somewhat linked, you want to know a little bit more about other aspects of the business. So for example, if I read the About Us page and I'm like, hey, I really want to work with you, rather than maybe scrolling up and going to contact, maybe you have your either Calendly or your Acuity link there. Maybe you have a button to say, hey, learn a little bit more about our process. So the idea, again, is going back to that customer journey. It's like, okay, somebody found out all this information about who I am. What can I do so that they don't have to take a major extra step? What's going to be their most likely step? Is it going to be for them to contact me? Is it going to be for them to check out my new book that I just launched? All these are different steps that somebody can potentially do. So you really want to use your About Us page as a journey to build that trust, build that relationship, your expertise, your knowledge, your experience, but at the same time, hopefully help them to take that next action as well.
That's a really good point, is have things there to help them take the next step with the best action. So I love that. And it could be buying the product. If you're selling retail products, you want to encourage them to buy. And I also think it's important to have testimonials on your About page. I know we do that. That's important, especially, as you said, for a service industry, but also if people are selling a product. People want to know, what are other people saying about you?
Yeah, it's huge.
So I want to get a little more technical, because I know you do audits of websites, and you did an audit of our goodypr.com website. I know you did different scores, and it's like red light, green light, and yellow if you need to improve. So how do you help CEOs improve SEO by using that audit?
Yeah, so I absolutely love, those audits, because one of the things that we can often fall in love with when we see our websites and we see what it is that we do is we don't see that technical piece. We don't see the behind the scenes things. And I often, compare that audit, that initial audit that we do, because it provides a return on different SEO factors, and there's hundreds of SEO factors that go into what it means to return a result, and those factors depend more and more and more depending on how competitive that keyword is. So the more competitive the keyword, the more you want your website optimized. If you're the only one that does what you do and how you do it, you probably don't have to worry about as many of those factors. So it's also keeping that into account. But that initial audit, what it does is it's just like you go to the doctor, and the doctor will check your vitals, see how your blood pressure is, ask you certain questions, just all of that to understand from a baseline standpoint where you're at. That's what the audit will do. It looks from a Google Spider perspective on the gaps and opportunities. It looks at your title tags, meta descriptions, which essentially are certain things on the back end of your website that, for lack of a better term, translate for Google what's to follow on each of the pages. So it will let you know from a perspective like, hey, you use too many characters, or hey, you want to maybe minimize this. The good thing about that is it tells you from that perspective, but that's often where we want to have like a conversation, because even if you only have your company name and your title tag, which again, is on the back end, it summarizes what's to follow on your page. The question becomes, are you really optimizing your website as well as you could? While you might have gotten a green check mark, the question is that how people are going to find you? Are they going to type in your company name, or are they potentially going to type in, hey, high-end CPA firm or plumbing company or PR company? They're going to type in some of those words because they may not know your company name. And that's where SEO really shines. So looking at, the title tag meta description on the home page, but also on other pages, is absolutely huge. That's one of the big things you want to look at. The second big thing is going to be page speed. Page speed is absolutely huge because, again, thinking about how and what Google is in the business of doing, they want you to find what you're looking for as quickly as possible. So anytime you've gone to a website, and I don't know if you've, gone to websites, Liz, sometimes when, you're looking for something to eat, maybe, you stop on the side of the road and you click, and then it takes forever and forever and forever to load. And you're like, oh, I can't do this. I go to someplace else. Same exact idea. The faster your website loads, the more likely you are to rank higher, because Google wants you to find what you're looking for as quickly and accurately as possible. So optimizing your website, making sure your website's loading fast is absolutely huge. And I think if I could pick one more big thing, and again, there's hundreds of factors, it's going to be backlinks. And you're in the business of helping people. One of the best backlinks that you can get is having really great PR, because you get those backlinks that are off of your domain going back to your site. But you can also get basically directory listings, comments. There's different ways to claim backlinks, and a combination of a really strong PR strategy, along with looking and doing the research of what sites are ranking for the keywords that you want, and doing the homework to see what those backlinks will really set you up to rank well. And if you're not familiar with backlinks, all that basically means is that there's a reputable site that has featured your business, maybe even gave you a directory listing. And it has basically a ranking, which is kind of like a domain authority, and it links back to your site. So the more quality, and it's not just quantity, it's quality backlinks that you have, the more reputable your site looks, hence the higher your site is going to rank. So it's kind of a simplistic way to look at it, but this report will basically look at your title tag, meta description, page speed, make some recommendations, but also give you an idea of like how many backlinks approximately you have, what your score on your backlinks are. So again, it gives you that baseline as if you were, going to the doctor for the first time and you want to see how your health is.
That is so helpful. And I definitely need to talk to you more, because I got red, green, and yellow. So I need help. So for all the listeners out there, if they want help and they want an audit, where do they go to get an audit from you?
Yes, absolutely. The absolute best place to go to is we have a site called Blue 16 Media, and we have a subsite called Blue 16 Marketing as well too. So basically, if you fill out a contact us form, we'll reach out to you, mention that you heard us on the podcast and you want to get your audit to kind of see where you are, see where your vitals are, see what might be some gaps and some opportunities that you can take advantage of.
That would be wonderful. So blue16media.com or blue16marketing.com. I really recommend it, because like Gresh said, you can look at your website all day long. You think it's beautiful, but what is going on under the hood? It's your vitals, but it's also like a car. Is your engine working correctly? And so this tool, the SEO audit, is just a great, great idea. So thank you for that. Is there anything else that we want to talk about that's really important with SEO, or anything else you do to help CEOs get better visibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we touched a little bit upon CB Nation, and this is where I talked about that PR piece. What I've, focused to try to do is I try and I preach a lot about providing value to your target market. Once you figure out who exactly, your target client is, if it's high net worth, individuals that need a CPA, figure out what brings value to them. So one of the things that I try to do with the blogs, the videos, and the podcast is interview entrepreneurs and business owners and CEOs to learn more about their business and opportunities. What that does is it provides a backlink, of course, going back to their site. But I think on a really deeper level, as you can definitely attest to, it provides them an opportunity to talk about their story, what makes them unique, their secret sauce, all those things. So many times people think that they don't need SEO or they're not doing SEO. If you've ever been featured somewhere, if you've ever created a backlink or Google My Business or any of those things, you probably have already started doing SEO. I say once you have a website, you've already started with SEO. So just really think about like all the great ways that you can use to kind of leverage. And one of the big things that I try to do is just to provide value that way. So take advantage of those opportunities to be on podcasts, to have press release, all those things that can help you to rank higher and be where your clients are potentially searching for.
Well, that's a really good point. I don't want to really push Goody PR too much, but it really does make a difference. I've seen with my clients when they get TV, radio, print, or podcast interviews, and then they show up in search results, because what it's called is earned media, which means you earn the respect of that reporter to share your story. So it's somebody else saying, hey, look at Gresh, look at Blue 16 Media, instead of Gresh trying to market himself. So earned media is they say 3 times more valuable than any paid ad, and it's probably even more valuable. So definitely you want to make that part of your strategy. And I would just say, on a personal note, I have felt so fortunate because there's one blog, and it's a small blog that nobody ever heard of. It's called the John Fox blog. Anyway, they have one story that's called 25 Best Book Publicists, and I'm in it as one of the 25. And I get leads from that story every day. Every day from one blog, I get leads. And most people, a lot of my bigger clients would turn that down. They would say, that's not well known enough for me, so I don't want to be on a blog. And then I try to explain to them, no, you have no idea where the traffic's going to come from, and you should do every interview. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's such a great, mentality to have. And I remember I was in I believe I was in a networking event or something, and someone was talking about, podcasters and making sure that you always are, practicing the golden rule. You're not saying, oh, you're not a big enough podcast. Oh, you don't have enough downloads, because for one, you never know what niches people have. So maybe that, site might be the only site that covers that or has that as a blog post. So that's one aspect. And you never know when that opportunity, is needed. But one of the reasons I love using the building the house analogy is because while you might see somebody as they're just putting in their hardwood floors, you don't know what their next step is. Maybe they just put in a hot tub in the back. And of course, that's just all a metaphor, but they're always building and growing. And as these sites build and grow, they get more relevance and more recognition. You never know if that site and that person maybe was featured on USA Today or CNN or Fox News or something along those lines, and their site got flooded with a bunch of traffic thereabouts because they wrote that blog post that created more opportunities for you. So I would really respect the fact that people are always growing and building their platforms. That's affecting and increasing their SEO and thereabouts. It could lead to more opportunities. And you bring up a really valid point. It sounds like you already have all these things in place, which everybody else should really make sure that you do. Have analytics on your website. Make sure you do know where people are coming from, because that just reinforces some of the things that you're doing. As you mentioned, if you didn't know that you had the analytics in place, you may not have known that came from there, and you may have an entirely different philosophy. But again, it's just really understanding and really using the data to your advantage so that you can make the best strategic decisions.
That's a really good point that we didn't talk about, and that's Google Analytics. And I do have that on all my sites, and I've hired a web designer who does it, and then we monitor it. But is that something your company does also with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest advantages of digital marketing is that you get to have that data, and you get to have that opportunity to see where things are coming from. So as you mentioned, like the media mentions, when someone's mentioned on, on a certain site and they have a backlink, you can see where people are coming from. So you can really start to understand like, okay, this is working. This is how well it's working. Oh, maybe I need to get this type of media because this is provided, more type of opportunities. So again, it just gives you eyes so that you can make strategic decisions.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I am so grateful for all these insights, and I just want to throw it back to you one more time. Is there anything else that our listeners should know, and where can they find you?
I don't think I have anything major additional to say. I know you mentioned that you didn't want to toot your own horn, Liz, but I'm going to toot your horn and say that, Liz is doing phenomenal things. So I appreciate, you very few people get it. And I appreciate you for getting it and giving me the opportunity to kind of be on the show. If you want to hear Liz toot her own horn a little bit more, definitely check out my podcast. And she has been on the show, and looking forward to that coming out. But if you want to get a hold of me, you can find me. I have a personal site at iamgresh.com. That's iamgresh.com. And like I mentioned, you can find us at Blue 16 Media. That's blue16media.com as well. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And you making me blush, but I appreciate you having me on your I Am CEO podcast. I highly recommend that. So everybody go listen to that too. And please help guide your customers to find you by shining a light through SEO. So thank you again to all the listeners, and thank you, Gresh, and let's go change the world.
Thank you.
Do you want to increase your sales and word of mouth marketing by constantly being in headline news? Instead of getting lost at a big agency, Goody PR specializes in VIP service, where making your business look good is their top priority. Goody PR founder and best-selling author Liz H. Kelly has been there, done that, and built a team of PR professionals who have booked thousands of major media interviews for clients, including The Today Show, CNN, Fox News, BBC, NPR, and many, many more. Let them partner with you to find ways to magnify your brand so it emotionally connects and reaches your ideal audience. And the best part is that media interviews are 3 times more valuable than any paid ad. What are you waiting for? Email info@goodypr.com today. Set up a call to discuss how to get your story and business moving forward. That's info@goodypr.com. Thank you for tuning in for this edition of 8-Second Branding. Keep checking back for new shows featuring your host, Liz H. Kelly, on the Voice America Business Channel.